Hello everyone, welcome to Gamma again. Today is the second for Rhino, and we would be starting our day with surface as a topic, and eventually I would also go through some transform commands while using the software. Um, so last week we did more or less all the commands that more or less all the commands in curves, and we tried to explore different ways of creating a curve and different ways of changing the curve, such as extending, filling, or chamfering, connecting, blending. I also showed you some of the examples that we could create from curve from two views. I haven't purposely gone through some of the other utility commands that you see in the curve tab, such as project, pullback, intersection, contour. I'll go through some of these command later in this session, later during our sessions. Not particularly this one, but we would in fact start to create some geometries today, as we would have a good understanding of surfaces by the end of our lessons. So talking about surfaces or NURB surfaces in general, they are completely different from the surfaces we might be seeing in different modeling softwares. A property of a NURB surface is that you can consider a NURB surface as a plane with direction. You can just name it as name both the direction as u's and v's, and any point on the surface or the definition of this surface would be the real definition of any point on this surface would be defined by its value between 0 to 1 and the degree of the points. So as you see in this image, each point has their own index, such as in this case u0, v0, and it has its own degree. So that defines the curvature of this surface, and that you could say is a NURB surface. While in the other case, there are some peculiarities about these NURB surfaces. If you see in this image, when you try to create a hole in any surface, the properties of this NURB surface wouldn't change. The property being that the points of these points on the surface and the degree would still remain the same. So there are some pros and cons why we should be using NURB surface and why we should be using sometimes mesh surface, but more or less you just need to remember some things, and I think the most efficient way that I found would be to use a NURB surface than to using a mesh surface, particularly in this software. There are other software which does this job quite well, but I think Rhino is more efficient and more fast than most of the mesh modeling softwares. So as you can see, the properties of the surface remains the same, and even though you would create some changes in the surface, the rest of the things would remain the same. So technically, a NURB surface doesn't really predict that there's a hole in between unless and until you just separate out at these particular points and create another surface from it. But that being said, I think you could understand this better once we start modeling some things with surfaces, and once you start to understand some of the commands for creating a surface and some of the commands for which acts as a utility to these surfaces. As we discussed in our previous session, that the first or less the half of these tabs would be filled with the commands which more or less which more or less helps in creating the surface in the design space, while the rest of it are some utilities such as extending, filling, chamfering, as we learned in our curves command tab. So to start with, the first and the very basic surface would be a plane. It's similar to creating, you could use either a planar surface command, which this planar curve command. So in this case, if you want to create, say if you have created a surface with a rectangle, okay, and if I would like to create a surface of this rectangle, I could just select the curve, go to surface and say planar curve. I will get something like this. So there are, while we are creating a surface, there are positive and negative sides of the surface. So what I mean by positive and negative side is, or in fact a better way to say this is the front and the back side of a surface. So in this case, I have set in my preference the negative or the back side, as you could see, like some of the surfaces has grayish or whitish shade, while some of the surface shows more orangish look. So you can see this particular geometry very clearly, and you could easily depict that the outer surface has gray shade and the inner surface has orange shade. Sometimes it's quite necessary to have the faces in the same faces interiors or the exterior in the same as the other ones, while we are these surfaces. If you are just independently creating some things, it's okay to have a negative surface, but I'd recommend you to model with more positive surface. If you would like to flip this, you can just type in the command box flip, and you should find a surface. You should be able to find a surface which is more on which is positive. But before that, let's start by making a plane, or making a surface, a planar surface. So it's quite easy. It's similar, as I said, it's similar to creating a rectangle, and there are other ways you could do it. I'll just very quickly go through some of these commands. I'm sure you have this file and you will be referring to this file while you are creating your own personal library or catalogs of this practice material, and I think it's a better way to practice, where you could just use this file as a reference and you create your own version of this file to remember it yourself. So as I just created a surface with 3 points, and it asks for a start of the edge, so I specify my start point. I say that I need 10 units, so I can see that my limitation, it limits the curve to it limits the length to just 10 units, and I can choose a direction in which I would like to have my first I would like to have my length or oriented, and then I could just type in another unit which is like 20, and you can see that it also asks for the direction in which you could orient your plane, and that's how I make my plane with 3 points. Another good example would be creating a plane with which is vertical. So let's say you have this surface and you would like to create a vertical plane. So I select the length, let's say 20, and it's gonna ask me for a direction in Z unit. So let's say again 20. So ask me for a positive Z or a negative Z. So this is one way you could create a vertical plane. I think you could also create planes, a plane through points. So if you have these bunch of points, you could just select these points and you can say surface plane through points, and it would create some things like this, as you can see. Another cool command that I would like to show you would be a cutting plane. So if you have already existing geometry and if you would like to just cut a plane through that geometry, then you could use a cutting plane. So it asks for an object and it asks for select object for cut, press enter, start of the plane. Let's say I want to start my plane here and I want to end my plane here. So it would more or less create some things with some of the tolerance. So you can see like this is the tolerance of so what are some advantages that you could have from here if you would like to, let's say, have such multiple planes. So let's take this geometry somewhere and let's create some things from here. So to copy this, copy anything or duplicate anything on your Rhino, you could just select the object, press Alt and drag your geometry to whatever direction you would like. So I would go again, select the geometry that you want to copy or copy and duplicate, and press Alt and just drag your gumball. So you could create, that's a shortcut to create to create a copy and duplicate. What you could do is you could just use these planes to split the object at multiple locations. So let's use this command called split, and you can select the object and you can select the plane through which you would like to select. I'm just gonna hide it. Control H is the short form of hide, and you can, if you would like, you can just try to create some geometry of as you might desire with this particular cutting plane technique. I would like to see how well you could use these and how effectively would you could use these tools. So we will go through creating some geometries like this using such techniques later while exploring other geometries, or while we start formally with creating each of the geometry that I have created on this particular screen. So I would formally introduce you with some of the very cool and easy techniques for creating geometries on Drawing. Going to the next command, we could use the next command that we would be looking into is loft. So what a loft means is if you have a set of curves, it basically creates a curve, or it basically creates a surface within taking or considering these curves, your cross-section geometries. So let's take these curves. I'm just dragging in these curves, and what I could do is I could just grab this again, and I'm just gonna scale this. So I'm pressing shift to scale it evenly. Okay, so I have these three geometries, and I would like to create something, a surface between these three curves. So how could I do that? So I go to surface, I do loft, and it asks for select curves to loft. So you can select all these curves and you can just press enter. It's gonna ask for the starting of the curve, so you can start from say wherever you would like. Let's say I start from here, okay, and I press enter. So you could see that it starts from it creates a surface from the starting point where I have mentioned the seam lines, and eventually it forms a surface between these three profile curves. I would have a loft option box where I could create or select different settings. Let's say if I want to have a straight loft, so I could see some things like this. If I want to have something which is loose, so you can see that my model is, and whatever you're comfortable with, you can have a closed loft as well. So if you would like to have something closed, it could turn something like this. I would prefer that you start with an open loft, and eventually you could create a solid object of this single geometry later. So I would just select here, and this could be a very good way of creating some geometries from curves. So again loft, and you can see that I have already created, like it gets so easy once you get your hands on this particular command. You could create as many options as you like. Maybe like you can just start to play with these curves, and so I'm just randomly creating some geometries for so you can see all these different options that I could create. You could later give it a bit of thickness and then 3D print these geometries as per different scale. So that's a loft option, but I would like to also focus on this. So to do that, you can just keep your data or the task that you have previous to this, and eventually it tries to perform that again as you update the model. So I have asked my software that just record this part where I am creating these curves and I'm lofting these curves, and eventually just perform it as I do my next move. So that's how you could see. So you could see that I'm changing my curves, and eventually my geometry is changing as well. So this is a good way to update your model very quickly if you are not sure of your geometries and if you are still in that trying and testing mode. So you can use this command with mostly every command that you have. You just need to keep your record history on, and you need to perform that command after that. So after that, and eventually as you create your geometry, if you update your geometry, it's gonna be updated with the same command that you have performed previously. So I'll show you another good example for record history, as well as with some of the other commands that we will be doing. We would be using for creating the surface. Next one is surface using sweep one rail. So what does sweep one rail means? It's more or less a follow me kind of command. So you give a curve and it eventually follows the path that you have provided. So let's say I have these two curves, and what I would like to do is I would like to just create so let's say I have this particular I have these two curves, and I would like to create some geometry. I would like to create some geometry by using these two curves. So I would go to my surface. I would say sweep one rail, and I would select the rail first. Rail is the curve on which the other curve would travel, and it would ask for a select cross section. So I would also select cross section, and when I'm done I just press enter. So there would be there would be this option box that opens up. So you could have a free roam, or you could have like a road-like roam. So I could just say, let's say, do a free roam. Let me try again. So select the curve, cross section, so I think there might be some problem with my curve, so let's try it with a different curve. So let me just first hide all these unwanted. So I'm just gonna hide it by saying Control H. Okay, now it looks a bit more clear. Okay, so this is my first curve, or the rail that I will be using, and then the next curve is my cross-section curve. So let's take a cross-section curve in a plane to just start simply. Okay, so I'm just gonna make a curve with my project on. So let's just take this curve for simplicity. Let's just take this curve. So because I have kept my project on, my curve should form somewhere here. Okay, that's my curve. So I am using move command. So that's a transformation. That's a transform command that we are using here. So which is transform move. So a shortcut for this command is MOVE. You can just type in move. You can select the object wherever you would like to move it, and you just take the point and just move it to whatever locations you would like to see or have. So now we should be getting some result with sweep one rail. So I select and I select the cross section, and as I do that, I see that there is some things happening here. Eventually it's kind of creating a box like thing, but okay, let's see if I have an update. I think I just need to change my curve. This curve seems to be a bit boring for me. So let's try, or in fact, let's just try to shift this to the center. So if you would have kept your mid object snap on, you would be able to find the mid of this particular curve. So I'm just gonna change some bits of my code. If you have Rhino file, you might not get the control points at the first instant. In Rhino 6, if you select any curve, you would get these control points at the first instance, which is a bit easy way to control these curves. But if you have Rhino, if you're just trying to if you would like to change your curve with your control points, you can just go to your toolbar and you can just select this particular tool. So you can just select the curve that you would like to have, or you can just select the curve which you would like to change, and you can just select this command. So if you press on the left, it says show control points, and if you press on the right, it says point off. So if you say point off, and if you just select this, and if you do, so if you select object and press enter, so you should be able to get the control points. So to develop a surface from sweep one rail, you just select the surface, sweep one rail, select the rail, and select the cross section. So there it is. You have your curve here. So that's your sweep one rail. Now I'm just gonna pause this video right now, and I'm just gonna return in some time.